Hello guys, this is part 124 of ASP.NET video tutorial. In this video, we will discuss about caching multiple versions of a user control using VaryByControl attribute of the OutputCache directive. Let me show you the precisely the second slide. In the part 122 of ASP.NET video tutorial, we discussed about fragment caching. If you have not watched that video, I would strongly encourage you to do so before continuing with this session. In this session, we will be using the same. Let me show you the whole precisely the third presentation slide first. See that. Okay, this is the third presentation slide. Now what? Now in this session, we will be using the same TBL products, as you can see here, TBL product table that we have used in part 122 of ASP.NET video tutorial. If you need the script to create and populate this table, then please refer to part 122. Now let's go ahead and create a stored procedure to retrieve products from this table, product by name. This is the So I have this stored procedure here, sp get product by name, and this procedure take one input parameter at product name. So obviously by this name, we are going to filter and retrieve products from TBL products table. So if you look at the implementation of this stored procedure, this is straightforward. If the product name is all, if the product name is all, then we don't have a where clause. If the product name is all, then we don't have a where clause. Here we don't have a where clause. You know, we select ID, name, and description from TBL products. On the other end, if it is not all, then we are using that product name. Then we are using that product name to filter the rows based on the name column. Okay, to filter the rows based on the name column. Okay, select ID, name, description is equal to okay, select ID, name, description from TBL products, from TBL products, where name is equal to at product name, whatever we passing in to the stored procedure. So now let's quickly test the stored procedure. So obviously if I pass in all for the product name parameter and execute this, we get all the products. Means if I execute this, we get all the products here. As you can see here, we get all the products. On the other hand, if I just want, iPhone, then I pass iPhone as the product name. I only get that product. Means now if I pass iPhone here as the product name and execute it, I only get that product. All right. Now let's flip to Visual Studio. And then what I basically want to do is I want to create a user control. So to this web application project, let's go ahead and add a product user control. As you can see here, product user control, UC products control dot ascx. I have already added this to the web application project, and at the moment if you look at this, we have the control declaration, we have the control declaration itself, and then a table, with 1 pixel solid black border. Okay, so let's see what is the design that we need to have here. I have already typed that just to save some time in typing. So let me go ahead and copy the HTML for the user control. So go to the notepad, here it is. Now copy this from here to there, copy it and paste it. So let me go ahead and copy the HTML for the user control, and then we will go through it line by line. So go to the UC products control.ascx and paste it here. So this is a pretty straightforward HTML. Let me format that properly. So if you look at the HTML here, this In this table, we have a tr here, which just set the heading. We have just this tr here, which just set the heading for the user control, product user control. Here you can see it. Heading for product user control. Let me show you the design. Let me show you the design. So this is how it looks like. That is the heading, product user control, as you can see here. With a gray background, as you can see here. This is the background, gray background. Product user control. And then we have the static text, select product with a drop down list. Okay. And if you look at that one, that is the static text. Look at that. That is the static text. And then the drop down list. And then the drop down list. And then the drop down list control. And this drop down list control has several list items. And this drop down list control has several list items. All the products that are basically within the within the within this TBL products table, as you can see here. Table whatever products we have. We have them in the drop down list as well. As you can see here, whatever products we have in the TBL products, we have them in the drop down list as well. Where is the drop down list? Here, as you can see that as well. The names, just their names. Okay. Along with those products, I have an additional list item here. Along with those products, I have an additional list item here which says all. And the important thing to notice here is that the text and value the important thing to notice here is that the text and value are both names. Okay, and another important thing to notice here is auto post back. And another important thing is auto post back property is set to true, which means whenever a selection in the drop down list changes, it is going to be posted back to the web server immediately. So that is the second tier. And then we have a grid view control, and then we have a grid view control. Obviously, whatever products that I select within the drop down list, whatever the product that I select within the drop down list, I want to show that product within the grid view control. So to display those products, we have this grid view control. And then user control server time, and then user control server time, and user control client time. So to print the client time, we have this. So to print the client time, we have this JavaScript. We have this JavaScript. We have this JavaScript code. We have discussed about this in the previous. We have discussed about this in the previous session of this video series. So we are using the date JavaScript. We are using the date JavaScript function to retrieve the client side date and time, and we are printing that using the write function of the document object Okay, so since that is a JavaScript, it is enclosed. So since that is this JavaScript, it is enclosed within the script tag, and that is the client time. And we are going to print the server time in this label. And we are going to print the server time in this label control. So we will compute that in the code behind file in just a bit. And obviously that is the grid view control, and obviously that is the grid view control. So that is the design. User control. That is the design of the user control. So let's specify the code in the code behind file. So Let's specify the code in the code behind file. So what we need to do in the code behind file? Again, I have this code coded up. Again, I have this coded up. Copy this. So let me go ahead and copy and paste that, and then we will go through it in a bit. So that is the piece of code. So copy it and paste it here. So that is the piece of code. Again, this is pretty straightforward code there. Again, this is pretty straightforward code there. So if you look at this one in the page load, what we are doing, if it is not a post back, in the sense, if it is the initial get request, we are getting product by name. We are getting product by name. And what I am going to do here, instead of saying all, instead of hard coding the value of all, I am going to say drop down list one dot selected value. Drop down list one selected value. So whatever value that we have selected in the drop down list, okay, so pass that value to this method get product by name. So pass that value to this product get by name. To this product get by name. Get product by name method. To this method, here it is, this method get product by name. So what is this method doing? So what is this method doing? If you look at this, it is a private method. If you look at it, it is a private method, and this method has got some simple edu.NET code. And this method has got some simple edu.NET code. So if you look at this method, all it does is it makes a connection. It makes a connection to the database, and then execute this stored procedure. Sp get product by name. Okay. And that is the stored procedure which we have just say, and that is the stored procedure which we have just says okay. So whatever we product that we select within the drop down list, so whatever product that we select, so whatever product that we select within the drop down list, within the drop down list, that name is passed into this method. That name is passed into this method, and this method will pass that name to this stored procedure, to this stored procedure sp get product by name. Execute the stored procedure, retrieve the result, and display that within the grid view control. Within the grid view control. So this is simple edu.NET code. I am not going to go through this edu.NET code because we discussed about edu.NET in a great detail in edu.NET video tutorial. Please refer to that video. Okay, so that is this method. So that is this method. So we are calling this method in the initial get request. So we are calling this method in the initial get request. If it is not a post pack, then call that method. Pass in whatever you selected in the drop down list. Whatever you selected in the drop down list. Initially, when the page renders, all will be selected in the drop down list, because that is the first item within the drop down list. That is the first item in the drop down list. As you can see here, all is the first item in the drop down list. So if you look at this, that is the first item, as I have already shown you here. That is the first item that will be all will be selected. That will be all will be selected, which will be passed to this, method, and this method and this method will retrieve all products and then display them within the grid view control. And the other thing is label1.txt, which is nothing but and other thing is label1.txt, which is nothing but this label. which is nothing but this label, which is this label control, which is going to display the server side, date and time. So we are basically setting the text to date time dot now dot to string, and then we have the auto post back, and then we have the auto post back property of this. We have the auto post back property of this drop down list control, and then we have the auto post back property of this drop down list control to true. So I want basically, let's get rid of that. So whenever the selection in the drop down list changes, so let's get rid of that. Means get rid of this here, copy this one only. So I want basically, let's get rid of that. So whenever the selection in the drop down list, changes, we want to post back to the server. So if you look at this, we want post back to the server. And what we are basically doing is whatever the value that the user has selected in the drop down list, we are passing that selected value to get property by name function. And what is that function doing? It is going to pass that name to that stored procedure. And what is this function doing? It is going to pass that name to that stored procedure. Execute that, retrieve the results, and display the result in the grid view control. Okay, so simple. All we are doing on this page, basically within the initial page load, we are calling get product by name. We display all the products, but whenever we change the selection in the drop down list, this method gets executed. This method gets executed, and we will only show the selected product in the grid view control. Okay, all right. Now we want to use this user control. Now we want to use this user control on this web form, on this webform1.aspx. Okay, now here I already have a register directive. Now already here I have a register directive here, directive for the user control, because if I want to use that user control, if I want to use this user control, on this web form, I need to register that user control either on the web form or in web.config file. Okay, so it is that register directive. So it is that register directive. If you are new to the user control, I will strongly recommend you to watch the video tutorial on user control that we have discussed about in the previous session of this video series. Okay, so let's look at the HTML that we need on this web form 1 itself. So again, I have this here. Let me copy and paste this. So go to the notepad and look at here. Copy this. And so again, I have this here. Let me copy and paste this. Let me format this. Let me format this. Let me format this properly. Okay, so if you look at this again, I have this table, and within the table there is one tr, and within the table there is one tr. So if you look at the design, you know, it is pretty much straightforward. This is the user control itself. if you go to the source, that is the, if you go to the source, that is the user control in one of the TRs, and then above the user control I have another three TRs. Okay, so if you look at at three TRs that I have here, so here I have a heading which says page content that changes, So maybe this web form, I have some page content which dynamically which changes every time I refresh the web form, maybe company events, company news, etc. And then I have this page server time, okay, a static text, and then label control to print the server side date and time, and then obviously a text here, static text stating page client time. And if you look at the client time, we are printing the client time again using the, and if you look at the client time, we are printing the client time again using the JavaScript. So we are printing the server time and client time on the web form. So we are printing the server time and client time on the web form as well as on the user control. Okay, all right. So now we have all set up, but remember, either on the web form. So this web form code, we don't have any caching enabled on the web form. We have not enabled any caching on this web form. And if you look at the user control, again, we don't have any caching enabled. On the user control as well. So obviously, if we run this application as it stands, let's save everything. Let's save everything. You know, every time we request this web form change the product selection in the drop-down list, you know, the web form is going to be reprocessed, the web form. So run this, and the user control, everything will be reprocessed. Okay, basically we forget to set the we forget to set the page server time. Here we forget to set the page server time. So let's go ahead. So let's go ahead and set that to do that in the page load event. I'm going to set label 1.txt .txt is equal to date time dot now dot to string. Okay, so let me run this now. Save all. Save all. So let me run this now. So when the web form first loads up, so when the web form first loads up in the drop down list, all will be selected and all products will be displayed. And look at this. The time 126:58, 126:58, 126:58, 126:58. Look at, pay attention to page server and client time and user control server and client time. All of them are basically the same because everything is being processed on the server. Okay, so even if I change the selection, for example, I just want LCD TVs. Look at all LCD. Remember the timing 126:58 and LCD TV. Look at that, all the times both on the page and on the user control, they are the same. 127:51, 127:51, 127:51, 127:51 are the same. Now let's say we want to cache multiple version of this user control. Okay, to do that, obviously we have to enable caching. To do that, obviously we have to enable caching on the user control. So let's go to the user control. And enable caching. So to enable caching, we can use the @OutputCache directive. OutputCache directive. It is. So at OutputCache directive, let's say I want to cache this web form for maybe 60 seconds. So I'm going to set 60 as the duration. And then I am going to set VaryByControl. So I'm going to set VaryByControl is equal to drop down list 1. drop down list 1. So I'm going to set VaryByControl is equal to drop down list 1 because we want to cache multiple responses, based on varying value within this drop down list 1 control. I am setting VaryByControl to drop down list 1. Okay, that's it. We enabled caching for the user control, and we have enabled, basically we are going to cache multiple versions of this user control. Okay, for each difference selection in the drop down list, we will have a separate response of that user control cache. So with this change let me go ahead and run this, save the changes, save all the changes, and go to the waveform 1 and close this. So go ahead and run this. So now notice the time, the page and client server times. Page and client server time 131.46, 131.46, 131.46, 131.46. Time they are almost the same. Okay, now at this time, the user control time, pay attention. 131.46, pay attention, it is 131.46, 131.46. That is when get request of this webform.aspx is cached. Now let me go to LCD and let's go to the LCD. Where is the LCD? And let's go to the get request again. What was the previous timing? 131.46 of the server control. 136.46. Let's go to the server request again. Now it is changed, as that means the cache duration passed of 60 seconds. Look at the user control. So let me again do it and select this LCD again, and this time remember this timing 133.17, 133.17, 133.17, 133.17. Look at that. Again we have this one. If I again select anything else, desktop, 133.17 will come back. 133.17. If we go to the get request again, within these 60 seconds, this will remain the same. This server's time will remain the same, but after the 60 seconds, this will be changed. If let's see, if I select laptop, 133.17, now it is changed. Okay, after 60 seconds. So it is cached at that time that we have saw during these 60 seconds. Okay. Anytime I issue a get request. Okay. And if I change it to LCD, look at that again. For this selection, the waveform, user control is basically cached at, if I have showed you that, and that is what I get. But look at the page server time and client time and the user control time, they keep changing. Means remember this time, now it's 60 seconds is passed. So again, if I select this iPhone here, and I go to the get request again. Now remember this 134.25, 134 and 25, and it will remain the same during the 60 second, while other time will be changing. If I select that 134.25, remember this, and I select 134.25 or 134.25, 134.25, 134. So 60 seconds pass. So again I select this laptop 135.48. Remember this 135.48, 135.48. Go to the get request 135.48. See this 135.48. Again I select LCD 135.48. Go to the 135.48. Okay. Now 60 seconds is passed. Let's see 135.48, 135.48. Not still it is showing this. Now the 60 seconds should be completed. Now 135.48 will not be seen again. 135.48, 135.48. It means 60 second has not yet passed. Now it will be changed 135.48, 135.48. Let me check it again. 60 second has not elapsed yet. iPhone 135.48. Now 136.55. So 60 second has elapsed. Okay. So it was cast at 138.45 the previous time. I not remember that. So, and that is what I get. But look, every time is changing, server time. Cached response in case. So you always receive, a cached response in case if there is a response still, if it has not expired. Okay, so for each selection in this drop-down list, we are going to have a separate response cache for this user control. So obviously, to cache multiple responses for a user control, we can use VaryByControl attribute. You might be wondering, can't I use VaryByParam? Yes, we can use VaryByParam usually. In general, whether to cache, multiple responses for web form or user controls, we usually use VaryByParams. When we want to vary, caching multiple responses based on differing query string value or posted form values. In the next video, we will actually discuss about using VaryByParam to cache multiple versions of this user control. All right. Another way to actually cache multiple versions of this user control instead, here, if you look at this, we are using the VaryByControl attribute of the OutputCache directive instead of that, and we are doing that declaratively in the HTML. Now if we want to do it programmatically, we can actually use the partial caching attribute. So if you look at this slide here, we have just seen how to cache multiple responses of the user control declaratively using the VaryByControl attribute of the OutputCache directive, which is in the HTML. Where is the HTML? Here. On the other hand, we can also cache multiple responses of the user control programmatically using VaryByControls property of the partial caching partial caching. Here you can see it is. This is VaryByControl property of the partial caching attribute. So on the user control class, I can use this partial caching attribute. On the user control class, I can use this partial caching attribute. So if you look at this at the moment in the user control HTML, I have got rid of that output cache directive. I got rid of that output cache directive. I'm going to go into the class file. I'm going to go into the class file of the user control. I'm going to go into the class file of the user control. So this is the class. So this is the class. So this is the class of the user control. So this is the class of the user control, and then here I can actually use partial caching attribute. So partial caching, and if you look at the constructor, so partial caching, and if you look at the constructor, and if you look at the constructor of this attribute, you can specify the duration. And if you look at the other overloaded version means, and if you look at the other overloaded version, you can specify named method. You can specify the named method. Where is the name method? It is not showing that name method. You look at the constructor of this attribute, you can specify the duration, and if you look at the other overloaded version, you can specify named parameters. Where is the name parameter? Is not showing here. Okay, here you can see. Okay, name parameter as well. So basically I want to cache this for 60 seconds. 60 seconds. So I'm going to set 60 as the duration, and look at this name parameters. We specify the name of the parameter and its value. And that is what, and its value, that is what this name parameter means. drop down list 1. So I can specify VaryByControl property, the parameter here. So VaryBy property. So VaryBy property control is equal to then whatever is the name of the control by which we want to vary that. In this case, we want to vary caching based on drop down list 1. Drop down list 1 control. So I'm going to specify that as the value for VaryByControls parameter, named parameter. So this is one way. Another way is actually, so that is one way. Let me comment that. Let me comment that. Let me paste that here, or let me open the attribute once again, partial caching. And look at this. This is the second overloaded version. Second overloaded constructor of that partial caching attribute, class. But there is another constructor which basically takes all these parameters. So duration 60, and look at that next parameter. It is VaryByParams. It is VaryByParam. I'm not going to vary anything by params, so I am going to pass null. So I'm going to pass null. Then you can specify VaryByControl. Then you can specify VaryByControls. In this case, the VaryByControl is going to be drop down list 1. Drop down list 1. So that is what we pass. And finally, VaryByCustom. And finally, VaryByCustom. I'm going to pass that as null. I'm going to pass that as null. So I can either use this constructor of, so I can either use this constructor. So I can either use this constructor of partial caching attribute, or I can use the constructor that takes named parameters. So I can use either this constructor or partial caching attribute, or I can use the constructor that takes named parameter. I would say this is clean, because you know what you are varying the response just by looking at the code. Here I am varying or I am caching multiple responses based on VaryByControls parameter. Here it is not that clear. You will literally, here it is not that clear. You will literally have to open up this, param parenthesis parenthesis to see which overloaded version of the constructor that we are using. That we are using to figure out. Based on which we are caching multiple responses for the user control. But you can either use this constructor or this constructor to cache multiple responses of that user control. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.